How y'all doing? That's good. Doesn't sound great, though. I heard my buddy Chris Sacco was here yesterday. How'd that go? Yes. Chris is an amazing dude. I'm very jealous of his beard. I don't know if he knows that, but he knows it now. And we actually have an interesting little shared history. Fun fact, back in 2005, I sat next to Chris at a dinner. It was a YC dinner, Y Combinator dinner. And Steve was on the other side of the table, and he asked us about our little company called Reddit. And we talked for a minute or two. Didn't sound like left much of an impression on him. But about a month later, he actually invited us out to Silicon Valley. So at the time, we were living in Boston in this little apartment. We had maybe $70,000 in total funding raised at this point, this tiny little speck. And this dude, Chris Sacco, who at the time was like the right hand of Larry and Sergey at Google, had invited us out to the Valley. We thought, holy shit, this is awesome, right? So we made a mixed CD. Some of you don't know what that is, but we made a mixed CD for the occasion. Went out, got a plane ticket, stayed at my uncle's place, shared a bed in his guest room. It was a full-size bed. It was intimate, but anyway. And we went to go visit Google, and Chris was there. He was an incredible host. He showed us around. I mean, we were awestruck because we had just graduated from UVA, again, in this crappy little apartment, working on this project that we didn't even know if it could go anywhere. And Chris just treated us so well. We met with a bunch of people, and Google actually ended up making, I've never talked this on stage, Google actually made us an acquisition offer back then. So this is like 6 months into starting Reddit. Like we had launched literally 6 months earlier. And holy shit, Google wanted to buy us. They were actually planning on integrating Reddit comments into YouTube. Imagine that. They saw this potential. It was just the two of us at the company at this time, so it wasn't going to be some major acquisition. It was basically going to be acqui-hire. And we were blown away. We ultimately turned it down. Because obviously, well, we didn't accept it. But it was one of those moments that I'll never forget because it was like being plucked from obscurity and getting this sense of confidence that, oh, well, if we're working on something that right now still feels really small, but has gotten the attention of Google, maybe we're on the right track. Now, incidentally, on that same trip, we also visited Yahoo, this other company that was around at the time. And the executive who invited us there, who shall remain nameless, brought us into the room and had us pitching. And as a little disclaimer, again, Reddit was only 6 months old. So he asked me, he was like, how big, how much traffic do you guys have? We said, all right, well, it's probably maybe 10,000 daily users. It wasn't a lot, just a few months old. And he looked at us and he's like, you guys are a rounding error compared to Yahoo. What are you even doing here? I'm like, you invited us. Like, is that something Yahoo does? Like, you just invite startups in here and then just shit all over them? Like, that's a thing? So needless to say, that meeting did not go very well. I ended up putting that "you are a rounding error" quote on our wall back at the office. And I have to admit, I was a little pleased when I saw on Alexa, Reddit surpassing Yahoo in terms of US traffic a few months ago. But it's mostly thanks to y'all. Let's be real. A bunch of y'all helped us get that traffic. But those words, "you are a rounding error," like continued to resonate. I don't have a literal wall of negative reinforcement now. I just have a little folder on my computer. But it's still there, and it's still motivating, and it's still a reminder that in this industry, right? Great things can start from humble beginnings. And you all, how many of you are founders, just by show of hands? Yes, awesome. Okay, you all know it is a fight to get anyone other than your mom to care about your startup. And everybody is going to sleep on you. They will continue to sleep on you. And hopefully, you will find ways to take that negativity or that, in the extreme sense, that straight hate, and turn it into something positive. So I guess we should talk about this talk. I can't stress enough, though, Chris is an awesome guy. And I heard he even brought beers to his talk. Damn, if this were California, I would have brought something else. But Louisiana, we'll get there. We'll get there. Talking about marijuana. And I know, but I don't want to get in any trouble with the law enforcement. The point is, Chris is an amazing guy, and this is going to be hard to top. So, what the world needs now: community, conversation, shitty watercolor. I've had an amazing privilege for the last 12 years to have a front row seat at this thing that was a college project that me and Steve started on, not knowing anything, that, like I said today, is now number 4 in the US and I think 10 in the world, according to Alexa. And Reddit started, though, to shine a light on a lot of things that I've never really been able to understand, because I never saw content at scale like this before. I don't think any of us did, right? 12 years ago, before social media, we couldn't really get a glimpse into all of those water cooler conversations that are happening around the country. And the really interesting story that crystallized this for me, and I'll do this with an informal straw poll, was actually pretty recently. How many of y'all either participated in or saw content around the protests around the travel ban at these airports, SFO, JFK? Anyone? Yeah, it was a lot of that bubbling up around the social media. And then how many of you all saw this video of a protester, or a UPS man, or a FedEx guy rather, stealing an American flag that was about to be burned on video? Just by show of hands, how many? Okay, so significantly fewer, but I see you. So this story went viral in a very different part of the internet, but for tens of millions of Americans, this was the meme that was going on. This was the water cooler conversation, not this, because they're happening at roughly the same time, but it really illustrated, and I had a friend of mine who told me about this, and I was like, wait, a what video? I was like, dude, I'm on the internet 24/7. There's no way I missed some viral video. And he was like, no, just go look. And what I realized was these are my blind spots, right? There were tens of millions of people who were sharing and talking about this story that a whole swath of people on the internet were totally missing out on. And in a lot of ways really crystallized, I think, what happened in elections around the world, but particularly in the US in the last few years, is that we have gotten really, really good at seeking out things that we enjoy, which is good. That's what we like as people. But it's also created these blind spots. And I think it's an amazing opportunity because in practice, this technology should make those conversations seamless. They should make it really easy because it is just software. We don't actually have to all get into a room to talk about this stuff. And yet, we tend to cluster even more. So I want to get into this a little bit. Just some background on Reddit, in case you're wondering if you like data. The big stuff, 280 million monthly uniques. Very engaged. Thank you for all of the upvotes and all of the engagement. 53% men, 47% women, and the vast majority under 35. My grandma, still not using Reddit. I'm trying, Grandma Grace. I'm trying. She loves Facebook. Loves Facebook, but we're still working on Reddit. So the vast majority millennial. And the thing that I've really crystallized now in the last 2 years or so, since coming back to Reddit full-time with Steve, my co-founder and our CEO, is around identity. So I'm going to talk about what's in a name. Who are we? This is me, circa freshman year of high school, clearly spending a lot of time playing on the computer. And before you make any judgments about my haircut, some hipster somewhere is making this look cool right now. So I was ahead of the curve. All right, it's happening. The bowl cut's coming back. But at the time, I got into programming and started building websites. And I was building websites for total strangers on the internet who met me on message boards where I was offering my services to basically build websites for free for nonprofits. And so all of a sudden, these adults would be asking me for help, and I'd be this empowered teenager who knew things that they couldn't do, and it seemed like witchcraft to them. And I thought, this programming thing is really cool, and I learned to code from a bunch of strangers on forums who were giving me free help and free advice. And it really made me think, all right, well, if Purple Turtle 64 helped me figure out how to do that thing in CSS, I'm grateful to Purple Turtle 64. Right? What does it mean to actually have an identity on a driver's license? Well, it's a government name. Those aren't always real, obviously. Nick 11, not real. But this is not our entire self, right? We are more than just our government name. In fact, we as people are very complicated and full of so many different selves. And there have been all kinds of way smarter people who have done the research on this from a psychological standpoint, from an anthropological standpoint. And our government name doesn't really cover everything. And if you think about it, social media up until this point has also really only allowed one very filtered version of ourself out into the world. This is my own Instagram. I'm just going to put myself on blast here. This is a bowl of soup. It's called pho. It's pho. I mean, it's nice soup. It's great soup. If you haven't had it, you should. But I probably spent 10 minutes trying to take this photo. The hell is wrong with me? 10 minutes. And I was with someone. And I was like, hold on. Just slide back. I don't want your shadow in there. Let me get that. Okay, hold on. Get on my toes. You've done, if you haven't done this, you've seen someone doing this. And I was like, hold on. There, that's it. And click. Okay, we can eat. Right? And why? Why? Because then I would spend another 5 minutes just filtering it so the soup just popped, so the jalapenos popped just right. Because what? Because I wanted to capture some moment in time to basically create a bunch of FOMO in some people who I know at work and maybe knew in college. And it's interesting because we've created this entire social network that is around connection, but a very superficial, filtered, literally filtered version of connecting, right? It's like cocktail party conversation. We have spent the last decade having a cocktail party with everyone else on the internet where we're basically hitting this type of connection that is, it's like just talking about how great your vacation was or how cute your puppy is. And it's connection, and people need that for sure, but it's not the kind of thing that deeply influences or actually gets people to change their minds, because those are the conversations that take some amount of security and trust. And those things usually take time, they take some kind of extreme circumstance, maybe they take alcohol, but they definitely don't happen normally, quickly. But then I thought again, all right, well, in a lot of ways, pseudonymity, and that is not pure anonymity. We're talking, it doesn't roll off the tongue, but we're talking about like a made-up username, FluffyBunny64, can actually be the basis of real communities. And there's 150,000 communities like this on Reddit, but the moment when this crystallized for me was when I was explaining it. I was like, I have this brilliant idea. I'm going to explain this to some of our fans, to some Redditors at DragCon a couple of years ago. So Reddit's home, obviously, to some of the largest LGBTQ communities on the internet. And we sponsored DragCon, and I was talking about this very concept to one of the queens who was there. And as I was explaining it, she just rolled her eyes and looked at me and was like, you really? You think this is like some innovative thing? Like, our entire culture and community is based on pseudonymity, right? The identity that I've created for myself means more to me than the one on my driver's license. And that's a really powerful thing for me because it lets me express myself fully, myselves fully. I thought, all right, well, this predates the internet. This predates so much. And yet we've seen it working at scale. This is basically how drag explains Reddit. So there's over 145,000 communities of people just around their passion, sharing whatever is on their mind about beards. For instance, I'm obviously a member of the beards community. People are talking about facial hair routines and all this stuff. And again, they're showing off their best practices to a community of people they only know by screen names. And this seems crazy at first until you realize these are the actual people feeling as free and open to express themselves as they ever could be online. And if you don't like beards, that's fine. They'll grow on you. If you want to. I thought Redditors liked puns. All right, fine. Westworld, people like Westworld. No, wow, really? No, it's fine. This is an amazing, if you don't watch Westworld, you really should. It was the first time I've seen both top-down and bottom-up culture creation because Jonah Nolan, one of the co-creators of this show, also happens to be a hardcore Redditor. And so he was spending the entire time lurking on Reddit and occasionally popping up in the comments as Redditors were deducing entire plot arcs by like episode 3. And this was cool because you've never really seen this kind of virtuous cycle where the creators are now playing a cat and mouse game with their fans in real time because the water cooler was never this big before. I would argue this maybe would have even saved Lost from going to whatever weird place it went. But like there was literally a thread where someone was like, well, hold on. No spoilers, don't worry. Whatever happens to Dolores' paintings every day when she finishes painting them? Legitimate question. Jonah Nolan showed up, actually shared footage that they never aired on the show, but footage he just had sitting on his hard drive showing what happens to all of Dolores' paintings. And so it created this cycle that obviously spun up, and then, by the end of the day, it was all over Facebook and Twitter, and 3 days later, it was on BuzzFeed. And what's so remarkable about this is, for the first time ever now, we all have that smart friend. You know who I'm talking about. I watch an episode of Westworld, and I'm just sitting there alone in the darkness, wondering what the fuck just happened. And I have no one to ask what I'm missing. But I can go here and, 1, 2, 3, 4 clock can say, I have this idea. What if ... And if enough people think that theory is good enough, it reaches the front page. It doesn't matter how famous they are. It doesn't matter how good their photos of soup are. All that matters is how good that idea is. And all of a sudden, now we have that really smart friend whose idea can bubble up and we can all benefit from. And that's how all of this was happening. And that's how many of us would show up at work the next day with our brilliant Westworld fan theory stolen from some Redditor. And this is great, because this is changing the process now. And so Jonah Nolan himself said it changes the way he thinks about the content he's making, because now he knows he doesn't have to pander to the lowest common denominator of viewer. It's not just about make it so that everyone can kind of understand what's going on. No. He can actually write things in, shoot things in a way that he knows only a small fraction of people are going to pick up on. But that's okay, because those much more observant, smarter people can now come here to share it with the rest of us. And now we all get lit in on some secret. We all feel better off for it. And it creates this new experience that we've never been able to have. And then there's the food porn. I already talked about soup earlier, so let's just go in. I don't want to start a controversy here. This is some ramen, though. I want to give equal time. This is a great soup as well. And here's some user named Falune, who happens to be a really expert at ramen. Why? Why share this photo with a bunch of random people who you don't know? No one at work the next day is going to be like, great shot of that ramen last night, right? No one from college is going to be like, man, that person has a really great life eating great soup. No, it's being shared with people who actually care, because it is a self-organized community of ramen lovers. And so we're seeing this time and time again, and what's so exciting is now we're starting to tap into the conversations that we can start. And so in response to the travel ban, I posted an open letter on Reddit, talking about the story of Reddit, talking about my own personal story, because without immigration, there'd be no Reddit. And so at the end of it, though, solicited stories from users. So from the 1.6 million people who saw this post, we generated tens of thousands of comments, thousands of which were rich, amazing stories of their own family's immigration to the US and what it meant to them, and how powerful it was to see all these stories being shared openly and authentically at a place where they could actually get the stage that they deserved. And again, it didn't matter how good their photos of soup were. It just mattered if the story they were sharing was good enough. So we're starting to see more and more of this empathy and understanding, and we're seeing it happen in places that I have total blind spots to. This is the r/Islam community on Reddit. Started spending a little time on there and noticed, hey, a bunch of people were frustrated that there was no hijab in emoji. Seems like a minor thing, but let's be real, emoji are basically the lingua franca of the internet. And for hundreds of millions of people, here is an important source of identity that was excluded. And so, by virtue of having this water cooler to sort of peek into, I'm not Muslim, but by having this water cooler to peek into, discovered this young woman named Rayouf. She was, I think, 13 years old at the time. And when she proposed, and yes, there is a proposal process for getting emoji, but she proposed a headscarf emoji. And she showed up to do an AMA on I think it was 2X chromosomes, then one later in r/Islam, to generate interest and generate buzz. Of course, as soon as she did it, it produced a ton of press, a ton of attention, and it actually worked. She actually got this approved, and in the next release of emoji, you're all gonna have headscarves now. And this was a teenager with an internet connection and an ability to get an audience and a forum. And for someone who is not a member of that community, I was able to be given the privilege of perception and some understanding and some perspective. And this all happens because of that conversation. And it's that water cooler that we want to stoke, and it's that water cooler that we also need to fight for, because that is the number of times a comment or a message or a post gets submitted anywhere on Reddit and does not get reported by another user. So 0.02% of the time, there is something that gets reported and we have tools and a team to intervene. Now, we want to get this number as close to 100 as possible. But consider for a minute that 280 million people every month, pseudonymously, on the internet, are commenting, are messaging, are posting, and 0.02% of the time, someone is reporting it for being problematic or any conflict with our content policy, which was a really important thing for us to update about 2 years ago, like I said, when Steve and I came back full time. We tightened it around issues where we felt we were stopping people from feeling like they could find their home on Reddit. And it's a deliberately gray line because, frankly, it's the only way to enforce successfully. Because the two components that we needed to influence were trust and safety, which was a team that we created of people whose sole job it is to basically enforce the content policy. When there were violations, these people, both community sort of non-technical people as well as technical people, are enforcing it. And then a community team that can actually do the job of helping build community in all the proactive and positive and amazing ways that happen. But they have to work as separate but in tandem units. And then we developed an anti-evil team. So this is our SEAL Team 6 for dealing with assholes. And it's headed by one of the smartest, hardest working people I know, Dr. Chris Slow. This dude was top of his class at Harvard, undergrad and grad in physics, and he was our first hire at Reddit 12 years ago, and we lucked into him as our first hire. He's brilliant. And he runs this anti-evil team. And people often asked, actually not that often, but every now and then someone would ask, well, why are you putting all of this engineering horsepower, why are you putting, like you just said, the smartest, hardest working person you know, on a problem that's not affecting growth or revenue, right? Those are the two things every startup is supposed to care about, growth, revenue, growth, revenue. And the answer was really easy, because this is a long-term investment in something that will get us to where we actually need to grow and go. And I would much rather sacrifice a little bit of short-term revenue and growth generation for that long-term value of having the most brilliant people in the room working on this problem, because we want to get as close to zero as possible. And so we have this monopoly on online conversation. And it's an interesting time, right? Because every news site is shutting off comments. If you go on most social media sites, people have created followings they don't actually want to hear from. Right? I mean, no one is reading comments on Facebook or, God forbid, Twitter or YouTube, or even Instagram. It's just full of spam, right? None of these platforms were actually designed for threaded, real conversations with the best stuff bubbling up. And it comes back to that idea of authenticity, which pseudonymity is really uniquely positioned to unlock. And I have a good example of this. Jake, amazing dog, has that saying, you may be familiar with it, sucking is the first step to being sort of good at something. It's amazing advice. Although it is a cartoon dog, it is still sage advice. And what Jake knows, and what I think you all know, is that we all suck when we try some new thing. Doesn't matter what. And sometimes it can be pretty embarrassing to be bad at a thing. And so, I don't know, how many of y'all know who this is, just by show of hands? Okay, one proud hand. How many of you know who this is? Yes, okay. So, wait a minute. I just showed you the government name, and one person knew, and I just showed you a pseudonym, and a lot of y'all knew. Now, this is what's cool, right? Because this is the same person. Shitty Watercolor started out, as his name would imply, as a shitty artist. He got a watercolor set for Christmas and wanted an excuse to start learning how to make art with it. But Hector was way too embarrassed to ever sign his name on this stuff, because it was kind of bad, like charmingly bad. So he created a username, which was obviously self-deprecating, Shitty Watercolor, and started sharing art using it, because it gave him the creative freedom to just try and experiment and be shitty, because that was okay. And actually, over time, got really good and did a portrait of the President of the United States that CNN picked up when he stopped by for an AMA. He's actually a really good artist now. I just call him Watercolor. I don't even bother calling him Shitty Watercolor, because he's earned it. But his following, his identity, his everything is not Hector. It's Shitty Watercolor, which is probably a weird thing for him to explain to his parents. But that's what this can unlock. And we know there are more talents, we know there are more amazing ideas and people who have them that haven't been unlocked, that we want to get in front of the world. Hector's not the kind of person who's going to get up on a stage, or the kind of person who wants to put himself out there publicly without having that shield of a pseudonym, of an identity that he was able to construct that sort of separated him but let him be his fullest, truest self. And so this actually led to a major product update, which we're starting to roll out now. And if y'all want to get into the beta, I just figured like, y'all are working on some cool stuff. We wanted to give people a way to find their voice on Reddit and have a way to basically share content they were working on. So if you've got a webcomic, if you've got a blog, if you've got any content that you want to build around, email my boy Dip, and we'll get you on the list, because we wanted a way for people to be able to contribute content and build an audience on Reddit that is not limited to submitting to a community. Because even that is really daunting. It's essentially the digital equivalent of getting up on stage and being like, hey, r/comics, what do you think? And it's pretty intimidating. So we want to create many more shitty watercolors. Or like I said, whatever it is you want to do, the secret is in conversation. And the people we've already seen thrive on this are thriving when they start great conversation. Because, like I said, we've built all these followings on all these platforms, but no one ever wants to hear from them, really. And this will be the first time you'll be able to actually benefit from the wisdom of your crowd. And I'm excited to see what y'all do with it. So when you email Dip, just be like, hey, Alexis told me to email you. It'll be good. I didn't tell him I was doing this, so he's gonna love his inbox. I'm kidding, I told him. All right, but the end goal is we want everyone to find their home and their voice on Reddit. And we still have a lot of work to do, but we are up for that challenge. And we've already come quite a long way. This is 2005 Reddit. A little brutal. See, I got -1 karma. That's because Steve is a jerk, and he downvoted my very first ever submission to Reddit. It's all right. I'm over it. But I knew, there was only 2 of us in the room, so I knew who it was. And over time, it started growing, it started improving. The interface didn't change a ton, but we started making it a little bit more modern-ish, barely. Yeah, this is really 2009. By 2010, we had actually left. And then 11, 12, you could see. So we left Reddit for this period. Nothing actually really changed. And then we started updating. But look, the improvements still have a long ways to go on desktop. And everyone started out from a pretty basic position. This was early Facebook. Some of y'all hopefully remember this Facebook. These were strange times. Oh, man. Jeez. Especially with the Zuck in the corner, just looking out over everyone. You could totally imagine him in that meeting, too, being like, okay, I got this great idea. Let's put my face in the top corner, looking down over everyone as they update and upload personal photos of themselves. They're going to love that. And then I'll put 1s and 0s over the top so they know that I'm a serious hacker. They'll know how secure their personal photos are. God bless Sheryl Sandberg for getting in there. Because really, who, right? Who? Wasn't anybody in the meeting like, I think this is a terrible idea, Mark? Anyone? No? Anyway. God, I love that. Look, and then there's Twitter. Whew, I know, their stock just tanked another 10% just by me showing this. I'm just kidding, they can't possibly fall any faster. So what's cool about this is it's so clear that someone had just taken their first clip art class or Photoshop class, because they were like, all right, let's see, we get the drop shadow, check. I want this logo to sweat. Unless you're a beverage company, I think it's generally a good principle to never make your logo sweat. And then finally, the physics-defying drops. Like there's a strong breeze coming over. It makes no sense. But look how, and I won't even comment on the weird graffiti text thing down there. What up? Send updates from you. Hey, but this is how it started, right? These all start from humble beginnings, all right? And let that be encouragement, okay? Because we can iterate, we can grow. The key is making something people want. And like I said, Reddit was kind of frozen in time for about 6 or 7 years while we were gone. And I'm grateful to be back. I'm grateful Steve is back. We have a lot more work to do. But we finally, we shipped native mobile app. We didn't have a native mobile app until last year. And tons of you have downloaded it. We're doing 4.5 stars. And it's a glimpse of what is to come. The desktop, everyone always asks. Yes, you probably saw Steve, our CEO's update. Desktop improvements are coming too. But the engagement on mobile is not surprisingly the majority. And And one of the things that's most pleased me, though, in the last few years is we have some amazing PMs and engineers at the company who are working on April Fool's Day pranks. I know this seems silly, but these April Fool's Day pranks have been legendary. I don't know how many of you worked on Place. This was, thank you, this, like you all made something amazing happen. This was the largest crowdsourced work of art. We basically gave Reddit a blank canvas. 1,000 by 1,000 pixels. The only catch was a user could place a single pixel every 10 minutes. And we all kind of held our breath. I remember Josh Wardle, who's the brilliant PM who had come up with this, when I remember him pitching us, and everyone just kind of was like, okay, all right, we believe. We believe. And what happened was just incredible. I mean, this is a time lapse of it, but over time, this was over a few days. Right? Users started coordinating. At first, it was just random, right? At first, the anarchists were like, we've got a giant blue space in the bottom right. And then little Pokemon started showing up, and people were like, leave Squirtle alone. And then you could see the German flag overwhelming the French flag, which is kind of dicey. We've seen this story before, but wait. Then the Belgians showed up, and then there was actually a truce down there. It actually was amazing. The final version looked like this. And you'll actually notice for you history buffs down there. See, look at this. We got Germany and France, and the little EU flag popped up right in the middle. Like, you couldn't have possibly dreamed up something more weird and whimsical and awesome than what millions of people, 1.2 million to be exact, participated in creating together. We didn't give them any directions. We just said, here's how it works. And the team has worked on some of these amazing projects over the years. There was another one called Robin the year before, which was chat. The one before that was the button. Hopefully I'll participate in that. Purple, no judgments. But what's so special here is that this is the only time we've been able to run a social experiment like this. Like, we have hundreds of millions of people connected through community, through shared interests, knowing nothing about one another other than their ideas and their experiences. And it's a privilege to be able to work on it. Like I said, we have some amazing people who, if y'all are interested, I'd love for you to join to work on even more. So it was everything they were doing. And they made puzzles, 3D visualizations. I mean, it was beyond all of our expectations. And so what I hope for, what I really, really hope for, is that we can see more and more of these chances, more and more of these just things where we build rules of the road. We obviously enforce them, and actually see what happens when we can come together and create something far bigger than ourselves. And we hope to do this not just every April Fools, but hopefully far more often. And I hope in the startups and the businesses and even the side projects you all create, you will be looking to do more that shows us how much more we have in common than apart. And this, man, this is throwback. This was us on the first day of Y Combinator. We had no fucking clue what we were doing. We still barely do, or but basically don't. I even had a shirt before we even had a website. Like, why do that? That was a terrible idea. And it was a cafe press shirt, which was just a horrible idea for lots of reasons. But back then, that was what you had to do. And now we still, I mean, this was us at the holiday party. We still don't really know what we're doing, but we are so excited to get Reddit to where we know it can go. And like I said, it's going to be a ton of work. But I think we have a unique opportunity because it is the one place where now at scale, like I said, 4th largest site in the US, people are coming together around their shared passions, and the only things that matter there are the ideas and the experiences. And it's an opportunity that I've seen play out in a few different ways offline. I did a bus tour over the Midwest in the Silicon Prairie back in 2012, just to meet entrepreneurs in the heartland. I really like buses. Did another one in, I think it was like 200 events all over North America for 5 months when my book came out. And so all I've done over the years is basically meet with Redditors, usually over drinks, hearing about why and what it means to them. And I'm so impressed every single time because there are actual real stories from the silly, like, hey, help me pass calculus, to the serious. Like, everyone in my community, online and offline, turned their back on me because I was dealing with alcoholism, and the one place I could go without judgment to find support was on Reddit. And so we obviously want more of that to happen. And it sometimes feels like a pipe dream, and then, you know, we get these moments of data and truth that are heartening. This is a community on Reddit called r/ChangeMyView. In this political climate, it seems unreal, impossible, but there actually was a study, I think over about 4 months, by researchers at Cornell that looked into how often people actually changed their views on this subreddit. So you'd come on and say, I believe blank, blank. I believe the Yankees, no, I believe the Saints are the best football team in the NFL. That's not very sensational. Yeah, well, I mean, all right. I believe that Tom Brady cheated. Is that a good one? All right. but then the challenge is change my view. And what actually happens here every day is people provide the best arguments they possibly can. The best ones get voted up. And 30% of the time, the original poster actually comes back and says, all right, you know what, you're right. I've changed my view. Now, I wish I could say that about my own life, and I know it's not true. I know I fail at that. And yet here it is happening online at scale among total strangers. And this isn't just like, oh, hey, we had 10,000 people do this. There's 280 million every month. And I hope we can get more of this. I am clearly not good at making slides. But I really want us to be able to achieve this for more than 280 million. I want us to achieve this for more than 1 billion. And the way we like to think about it is you come for the cats, you stay for the empathy. We've got a lot of work to do, but I thank you all, and I also want to beat Chris Sacca's record. So I think we have time. Do we have time for any questions, or no? Really? Oh, you don't know. Anyone? Okay, we'll take some questions, and then I want to talk to as many of you as possible as I can afterwards. Because I heard Chris was like doing like straight up office hours with everybody, so I want to do that too. So thank you very much. All right. What? Is there no? Can I do questions? And then if I'd love to hear startup pitches, feedback, whatever, I'll just be chilling down here. Take some selfies, this is cool. I cannot see anything. There we go, with the white cap. Hello. Yes. Okay, so essentially the question was, so she was very interested in knowing more about these echo chambers the internet creates. And Reddit, with its 150,000 communities, basically has 150,000 like-minded communities. How do you get people exposed to these different ones? So this is partially a product, well, this is largely a product thing, but it's also just a perception thing. So there are communities like Change My View where that's the explicit mandate of the community. But then there are others where I think we have a really unique opportunity. Right now, if I submit a New York Times article to 4 different communities on Reddit, there are 4 different conversations on Reddit from each community. And today, navigating to that in the interface is not trivial. Or there's a tab for other conversations, click, it's not great. We're investing a lot in mobile, because obviously that's where all the traffic is. The future that I dream of is where I'm looking at an article, and in typical Reddit fashion, I go right to the comments, because it's like, okay, great, I got the gist of the article, but I want to see what the community thinks about it, right? And I'm able to swipe and basically see what the different perspectives are on it. I love sports, so the analogy I always use is like after the Super Bowl, I could see 3 different conversations around the exact same game, one from NFL fans, one from Falcons fans, and one from Patriots fans, and it was so eye-opening and such good content. Because even though I had no allegiance to any of those sides, I was getting really, really great, a rich perception. That, from a product standpoint, is at least as easy as I think we can make it to try to give people that access, and then obviously making them aware of it. But then the other challenge is just human nature. On some level, we want to always, like as humans, right? We want to be around things that reinforce our preconceived notions. So we have to be really clever about creating content that's just really, really freaking good, that makes us still willing to like swipe or click or just even pay attention to what we're showing them. But we don't have the solution, but we're working on some options. Yes? Yes.
Hello.
Hello.
So, what advice would you give to the next Alexis Ohanian?
What advice? Geez, don't raise more than $70,000, you idiot, because you need to hire people. And even though that's more money than you've ever had in your life, that's not actually a lot of money to hire people. No, it would be, I mean, I really lucked out, right? My best friend from college ended up being my co-founder. So many founders get hung up on finding that founder, finding that amazing partner who complements you, who makes you better. So I think then the next challenge would have been making sure that I was having the hard discussions with them sooner, because it's really hard for a 22-year-old to have those conversations. I mean, that's kind of a cop-out, but it was for me. And then it's even harder when they are your friend, because switching that context from you're my best friend, we used to, hang out together, to you're still my best friend, but you're also my colleague, and we have to have healthy discussions about this stuff, is that shift that's so hard. And I would get executive coaching / mentorship way sooner. I didn't even talk to one until a year and a half ago. And all I do now is push that advice on young founders. So whether it's a mentor, whether it's a proper exec coach, whether it's even just a therapist or a rabbi or someone you can talk to for that outside perspective, that's the other one. And then finally, I would take better care of myself, physically and mentally. Founders, there's so much like hustle porn out there, and everyone, like our version of the beautiful pho is like the 2 a.m. inspirational quote of like over a cup of coffee that's like, I don't quit, I just crush it. And it's clearly like, it's one, it's bullshit, but two, it reinforces this idea that we need to be sacrificing like taking care of ourselves at all costs. And yeah, you gotta work fucking hard, obviously, to be successful. Okay, check, everyone knows that. Beyond that, it's just posturing and frankly just unhealthy. I mean, I personally went through a bunch of stuff during Reddit's life that I wish I had seen a therapist a lot sooner about, because it was years later that I realized, oh, that's what depression is like. That's what depression feels like. And mental illness is still stigmatized a ton in our society, and then the tech industry just makes it even worse, because all of the posturing is about going to events and being like, yeah, I'm killing it, and not actually finding people with whom you can share this stuff and get feedback and literally take time for yourself and exercise and eat well and all that like fundamental stuff, because this is the most important operating system. And I probably spent a decade, I definitely spent a decade just hammering it and really not taking care of any of it at all. And now I'm trying to make up for it. Okay. Oh, thanks guys. I kind of want to stop after that, but yes, okay. Oh, thank you, especially because you applauded. Look, for those of you with your hands up, just come up and talk to me now. But thank you so much. Y'all want to go drink, have some fun. Go to Vertimart tonight at 2 in the morning when you're having a really good time. Get a po' boy at Vertimart. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys.